For years, the world watched Tammy Slaton fight for every breath, every step, every chance to stay alive. Her battle played out on television screens, the highs and lows laid bare, the triumphs nearly overshadowed by fear, loss, and the weight she carried not only on her body, but on her spirit. And yet, here she is today, smiling in sunlight, holding hands with the woman who helped her find joy again. Because somewhere along the long road of surgeries, setbacks, and sorrow, Tammy discovered something people never expected her to find: love. Not the temporary kind that comes and goes when cameras stop rolling. Not the fragile love that shatters when pressure rises. But a love steady enough to hold her heart steady. A love that whispered, "You deserve happiness too." That love is Andrea. The newest video they shared doesn't announce a milestone or reveal breaking news. There's no number flashed across the screen.
No dramatic countdown.
No doctor weighing in. Instead, the video opens softly, morning light slipping across a porch, warming the wooden planks beneath their feet. Tammy sits on a porch swing, and Andrea is nestled comfortably against her shoulder. The world is calm around them.
No oxygen alarms.
No stress. Just silence, peaceful, grounding silence. It says more than any speech ever could. Hands clasped together, fingers intertwined, like they learned each other's palms by heart. Tammy stares ahead with a sense of peace that once seemed unattainable. For fans who remember her trapped in grief after losing people she loved, including her late husband Caleb, this image feels like witnessing a miracle in real time. Healing not only visible but lived. They didn't caption that moment. They didn't need to. The next scene takes place in the kitchen, but not the chaotic, tense environment viewers were used to. This time, Tammy stands confidently beside the cutting board, a knife steady in her hand as she chops fresh vegetables. Andrea handles the pan. They move like a practice duet, comfortable, efficient, and in sync. If anyone ever doubted whether Tammy could regain her independence, the proof is right here in the gentle scrape of knife against wood. This isn't someone barely surviving. This is someone living, building a life, and laughing while doing it. Laughter, full and unguarded, echoes through the room when a splash of sauce jumps from the pot. Tammy scrunches her nose. Andrea swats at the air dramatically, and for a moment, it feels like watching two best friends who just happened to be soulmates. For so long, food was Tammy's battle. Now it has become something she can enjoy without fear. A part of life, not the center of it. Later in the video, they step outside into the sunshine, bubbles floating through the air as Andrea's young nephew giggles and chases them across the yard. Tammy, settled into a sturdy lawn chair, blows bubble after bubble like she's creating tiny globes of happiness. Andrea watches them both, her smile soft and proud, the expression of someone who knows exactly how far her partner has come. There was a time Tammy doubted she'd ever take part in life outside a hospital bed. Now she's watching a child play, breathing fresh air, and planning tomorrow. The joy isn't scripted. It's real. The world once saw Tammy as a patient, someone fighting for a future she feared she wouldn't live long enough to enjoy. But Andrea sees her as a wife. A woman worth fighting for. A woman who deserves every sunrise and every shared laugh. And Tammy, in return, gives love back with a fullness she once believed her heart couldn't carry. The critics, the doubters, they can say what they want. But love doesn't need approval. It just needs two people who refuse to give up on each other. The video ends like it began, quietly. Tammy and Andrea watching the sky melt into a sunset painted with warm purples and deep oranges. The day ends with a soft glow and the calm comfort of knowing they'll do it all again tomorrow. No drama.
No breakdowns.
Just love. And maybe that is the most shocking transformation of all. Not the body shrinking, but the soul expanding. Because Tammy Slaton has lost hundreds of pounds, but in finding Andrea, she has gained the world. Days after the video was posted, the comment section exploded, not with cruelty, not with criticism, but with something far more rare on the internet: support. People who had once questioned Tammy's intentions, her effort, her future. now found themselves cheering for her. Messages poured in from viewers around the world, some who had never missed an episode, others who stumbled across the clip by accident and stayed because something about the love between these two women felt undeniably real. One comment read, "This isn't just weight loss progress, this is life progress." Another said, "Seeing Tammy this happy brings tears. She's finally free." And maybe that was the most powerful part. The shift wasn't just in Tammy's body. It was in her eyes, her expressions, the way she carried herself like someone who finally believed she deserved joy. For years, Tammy had lived under a microscope. Every movement, every meal, every breath judged, analyzed, turned into headlines. Doctors reminded her of numbers. Fans debated her choices. Producers documented her breakdowns, tears, and slipping progress like moments of entertainment rather than moments of vulnerability.
But now
the story was changing, and she was the one writing it. Not TLC. Not tabloids. Not strangers online. Just Tammy, and the woman who held her hand through every chapter. Andrea never craved the spotlight. She didn't step into Tammy's life to be famous or to ride the wave of reality TV attention. Instead, she stepped in quietly, consistently, patiently, showing Tammy love in the small moments that matter most. Like refilling her water before she asked. Like making sure her oxygen tube never kinked. Like celebrating victories that weren't visible on camera, fewer migraines, deeper breathing, longer walks, belly laughs without coughing. And Tammy noticed. One night, weeks before they filmed the video, Tammy sat on the couch watching Andrea fold laundry. Nothing glamorous, just towels and t-shirts. But something about that normality struck her deeply. Most of her life had been chaos, emergency calls, panic attacks, medical equipment, hospital gowns, and the constant fear that time was running out. Normal never belonged to her. But here she was, breathing normally, watching someone she loved do something ordinary. And somehow, it felt extraordinary. She remembered whispering, "You make life feel easy." Andrea turned, a soft smile forming, the kind that didn't need words to respond. But she spoke anyway. "It's easy because we're finally living, not surviving." That moment stuck with Tammy. It was the first time she realized she wasn't waiting for happiness. She was already in it. Later that evening, Tammy curled into Andrea's arms, laying her head against her chest, listening to the steady rhythm of a heartbeat that no longer reminded her of loss, but of reassurance, safety, home. For years, Tammy's body felt like a prison. Now, for the first time, it was simply hers, a vessel of possibility rather than limitation. Some nights, she still felt scared, the weight of her past mistakes whispering old doubts. What if you fail? What if you fall back into old patterns? What if this happiness doesn't last? But every time fear crept in, Andrea would squeeze her hand and remind her, "You don't have to do this alone. Not anymore." And maybe that was the most healing part. Not the surgery, not the diet changes, not the exercise, but the presence of someone who didn't give up when things got hard. Someone who stayed. Someone who chose her. Not in spite of her past, but with full understanding of it. As the evening sky dimmed and the porch lights flickered on, Tammy sat outside and thought about everything she'd survived. Addiction, loss, grief, almost losing her life more times than anyone knew. She traced the outline of Andrea's hand with her thumb and whispered, "Thank you for finding me." Andrea leaned her forehead against hers and replied, "Thank you for letting yourself be found." The world may still talk about Tammy's body, the numbers, the weight loss, the dramatic before and after pictures. But those who watched closely understood, her greatest transformation wasn't physical. It was emotional, spiritual,
human.
Because somewhere along the way, Tammy stopped trying to become who the world wanted her to be, and finally became who she was meant to be.
Loved.
Wanted.
Alive.
And side by side with Andrea, she was finally beginning the life she once believed she would never live. If you'd like, I'll continue to part 3 now, same style, deeper storytelling. You said, 3 ChatGPT said, Here is part 3, continuing the tone, pacing, emotional depth, and story direction. A few days later, Tammy and Andrea decided to take a short drive outside of town. Something simple, something many people would never think twice about. But for Tammy, even a small outing like this carried a meaning layered in history. There was a time when leaving her home required multiple people, special equipment, plans, contingency plans, and anxiety so intense it felt like suffocation. She remembered sitting in the passenger seat years ago, terrified that something would go wrong, that she couldn't breathe, couldn't walk, couldn't make it without help. Now Andrea pulled gently out of the driveway, music playing softly from the speakers. The windows were cracked just enough for cool air to drift in, carrying the smell of pine trees and the faint distant scent of wood smoke from someone's fireplace. Tammy rested her head back against the seat, eyes closed, one hand laced with Andrea's across the center console.
No panique.
No fear. Just peace. After a while, Andrea glanced over with a teasing grin. Don't fall asleep on me. We didn't drive all the way out here for you to nap. Tammy smirked without opening her eyes. If peaceful silence puts me to sleep, that's your fault for making me too comfortable. Andrea nudged her knee playfully. You snore. If you knock out, I'm recording it. Tammy opened one eye. You better not. Andrea raised a brow. I absolutely will. They both laughed, the kind of laughter that didn't burst loudly, but built slowly, rolling warm and steady like a wave. When they finally reached the overlook, a quiet spot with a panoramic view of trees painted in deep oranges, fading greens, and soft gold, Tammy felt a familiar tightness in her throat. Not sadness, not fear, just overwhelming gratitude. Andrea parked the car and stepped out first, walking around to Tammy's side. Without hesitation, without making it dramatic or overly attentive, she held out her arm. Not because she thought Tammy was incapable, but because partnership often looked like shared steps. Tammy stood, steady but cautious. The cool air brushed her cheeks, and as she took each step toward the wooden railing, she felt a strange mixture of pride and vulnerability, a reminder that progress wasn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes progress was simply walking. They stood together looking out over the valley below, the sky brushed with streaks of pink like someone had painted it with watercolor. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Tammy broke the silence. You know, I never thought I'd see views like this again. I used to think my life would just be hospital rooms and beeping machines. Andrea squeezed her hand gently. But you fought. You kept going. Tammy swallowed hard.
No.
I survived. Fighting is what I'm learning now. There's a difference. Andrea turned to face her fully. And look at you now. Tammy shook her head, blinking back tears she didn't bother to hide. It's still hard. Sometimes I still wake up angry. Angry at my body, angry at myself, angry at the past I can't undo. And sometimes I'm scared that happiness like this is temporary. Andrea didn't interrupt. She waited. Patient, the way only someone who had learned how to love a complicated past could be. Tammy finally whispered, what if one day, all of this goes away? Andrea took a breath, slow, deliberate. Then we make new versions of it. Again and again. Happiness doesn't only come once. Tammy looked at her, studying her expression, searching for hesitation, doubt, hesitation, anything. There was none. Just certainty. Just love. And if one day I get sick again? Tammy asked quietly. If things get hard, and I'm not this strong? Andrea stepped closer, voice steady. Then I'll meet you there, wherever hard happens. That's love, Tammy. Not perfection, presence. Tammy let out a shaky breath. Presence. A word she used to fear because she thought it meant being visible, judged, exposed. Now it meant being held. The wind shifted, making the trees rustle in soft waves, and Tammy leaned her head onto Andrea's shoulder, feeling the warmth and steadiness beneath. Somewhere deep inside, where fear used to sit like a locked door, something finally opened. Not fully, not all at once, but enough. Enough to believe that maybe she wasn't someone life happened to anymore. Maybe, finally, She was someone life was happening with. As the sun dipped lower and golden light bathed the hillside, Tammy whispered, "I never thought happiness could feel like breathing." Andrea smiled softly, not needing to look to know Tammy meant every word. "And now?" she asked gently. Tammy squeezed her hand. "Now it feels like living." When Amy walked into the courthouse that morning, she could barely breathe. Her hands were shaking, her eyes swollen from crying all night, and every step felt heavier than the last. The cold November air hit her face, but she barely noticed. All she could think about was the outcome waiting on the other side of those courtroom doors. Reporters shouted her name, cameras flashed, and people murmured rumors under their breath. But Amy didn't respond. She kept her eyes down, focusing on the floor, focusing on breathing, and praying silently that this nightmare would finally end. Tammy was beside her, rolling forward in her wheelchair, staring down the crowd with that protective, almost threatening look she gets when someone comes after her family. For once, Amy felt like her sister wasn't just there. She was defending her. Amanda followed right behind them, jaw tight, hands clenched into fists. If anyone so much as looked at Amy the wrong way, Amanda was ready to shut it down. Inside the courtroom, the tension was thick. Brian sat on the opposite side with his lawyer, not daring to look at Amy. He looked tired, defeated, almost like he finally understood the damage he caused. But Amy didn't look at him. She couldn't. Every time she remembered the yelling, the arguments, the fear, her chest tightened. She never wanted to feel that again. As the judge entered and everyone rose, Amy's knees nearly buckled. Tammy placed a hand on her arm and whispered, "Breathe. You're stronger than this." And somehow, Amy believed her. One by one, statements were read. The evidence was laid out. Witnesses spoke, neighbors, officers, even family. Amy's attorney argued fiercely that she had been pushed, provoked, and cornered, not the aggressor. The judge listened carefully, expression unreadable. Hours felt like days. Finally, the courtroom fell silent as the judge lifted the papers and began reading the final decision. Amy squeezed Tammy's hand, bracing herself for whatever was about to come. And then it happened. "Amy Slaton, you are acquitted of all charges." For a moment, everything froze. Amy didn't breathe. She didn't move. She didn't even process the words. Then Tammy broke first, loud, emotional, relieved. "Thank God," she shouted, wiping tears from her face. Amy covered her mouth and sobbed. Not quiet tears, real, raw, overwhelming emotion. Tears of fear, release, exhaustion, and finally, freedom. But the courtroom wasn't done. The judge turned to Brian, voice firmer, colder, and without hesitation delivered the words everyone had been waiting for, except him. "Brian Lavin, based on the evidence, witness statements, and repeated violations, this court sentences you to 5 years in state custody." Brian's face went pale. For the first time, Amy saw fear in his eyes instead of feeling it in her own. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She just sat there quietly, realizing the nightmare that nearly destroyed her life was finally over. When she stood up, wiped her face, and walked out of that courtroom, it wasn't as the scared woman who walked in. She walked out as someone who survived, someone who finally chose herself. As Amy stepped outside the courthouse, the world felt louder than ever. Reporters rushed toward her, microphones stretched out, flashes exploding like fireworks. Questions flew from every direction, some gentle, some cruel, some meant to provoke. "Amy, how do you feel about being found innocent? Do you have anything to say about Brian's sentence? Are you planning to file for full custody now?" But Amy couldn't speak, not yet. Her emotions were tangled, raw, and exhausted. She wasn't ready to relive it for cameras, not when she was still trying to process it herself. Tammy leaned toward the reporters and said firmly, "Back up. She needs space. Y'all already put her through enough today." Amanda added, "If anyone keeps pushing, I'll give you your own court case." And she looked like she meant every word. Security cleared a path, and the 3 sisters finally made it to the parking lot. As soon as Amy sat in the car, the The silence hit her. The chaos was gone.
No shouting.
No judge. No fear. Just quiet. Her hands rested in her lap, but they were still shaking. She stared out the window as the courthouse faded behind them, feeling like she was leaving a part of her life there, a painful chapter she never wanted to read again. Halfway down the road, she finally whispered, "It's over." Tammy turned her head. "Yeah, it is." Amy blinked slowly as tears rolled down her cheeks, not like before, not out of fear or despair. These tears felt different. They felt like letting go. "I didn't think I'd ever get to breathe like this again," she said with a weak laugh, wiping her face. Amanda reached from the passenger seat and squeezed Amy's hand. "You deserved better from the start. Now you get a second chance." Amy nodded, staring out the window. "I just want to be a good mom. That's all I care about." "You already are," Tammy replied. "You just forgot it because someone made you feel small." The car went quiet again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. When they finally got home, Amy paused before stepping inside. The house felt different. The fear that once lingered in the walls was gone. The air felt warmer, calmer, safer. Inside, the kids were waiting, unaware of the legal words, unaware of the emotional weight. They just knew their mom was home. As soon as her youngest ran to her and wrapped tiny arms around her neck, Amy broke all over again. But this time she smiled through it. "You're safe now, baby," she whispered, but really, she was telling herself. Tammy watched from the doorway, arms crossed, emotional in a way she would never admit. Amanda wiped her eyes quickly, pretending she wasn't crying. Life wasn't magically fixed. There were still things to sort out. Custody, healing, therapy, starting over. But the difference now? For the first time in a long time, Amy wasn't afraid of the future. She was ready for it. That night, after everyone finally settled and the house grew quiet, Amy found herself sitting alone in the dimly lit living room. The only sound was the soft ticking of a wall clock and the distant hum of cars passing outside. The day had been long, overwhelming, and life-changing. She could finally relax, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. She leaned back against the couch, clutching a pillow to her chest, staring at nothing in particular. Sometimes silence was soothing. Tonight it felt loud. Tammy slowly rolled into the room, noticing Amy deep in thought. "You all right?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. Amy nodded at first, but then she quietly confessed, "I don't know how to feel, Tammy. I'm relieved, but I'm also sad."
No. Tired?
"Everything." Tammy sighed and parked her wheelchair closer. "It's weird, right? You get freedom back, but the past is still right there behind you." Amy let out a shaky breath. Exactly. For years, she had lived in a constant state of defense, walking carefully, talking carefully, always trying to avoid conflict. Now there was nothing to guard against, and yet her body still reacted like danger was coming. "It's gonna take time," Tammy said gently. "You don't just wipe away years of stress in one courtroom verdict." Amy turned her head toward her sister, whispering, "I know what hurts the most. I loved him. Even after everything, a part of me still hoped we could fix it." Tammy nodded, no judgment, no criticism, just understanding. Love doesn't disappear because someone hurts you. That's what makes it so hard. For a moment, Amy stayed quiet, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "He wasn't always bad," she added. "In the beginning, I thought he really cared. I thought I finally found someone who understood me." Tammy tilted her head slightly. "What changed?" Amy sighed. "Little things first. Comments.
Attitude.
Controlling stuff. Then bigger things. I kept making excuses. Told myself it was stress. Or temporary. Or my fault." She paused, swallowing hard. "The worst part is, I started believing him. Believing I wasn't good enough. Not as a wife, not as a mom, not even as a person." Tammy's eyes softened. "But look at you now. You proved him wrong.
You fought back.
You didn't give up." Amy let a tear spill over. "Yeah, but I wish I didn't have to fight it all." Tammy chuckled weakly. "Girl, We've been fighting since the day we were born. Life just likes testing us. Amy smiled faintly. Yeah, it does. A moment passed before Tammy spoke again, her voice unusually sentimental. I'm proud of you. Amy blinked. She wasn't sure she heard that right. Tammy wasn't the emotional, affirming type. You are? Amy asked quietly. Tammy nodded. You could have stayed. You could have kept pretending everything was fine. But you didn't. You walked away. And that takes guts. Amy looked down, overwhelmed. Thank you. A soft knock interrupted the quiet conversation. Amanda poked her head into the room, holding a blanket. You two still up? It's like 2 in the damn morning. Tammy smirked. She's being emotional. I'm supervising so she doesn't drown in tears. Amanda rolled her eyes playfully. Well, I brought reinforcements. She walked over, tossed the blanket across Amy's lap, then sat beside her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. You ain't alone, she whispered. Not then.
Not now.
Not ever. Amy closed her eyes, finally allowing herself to lean against the warmth of her sisters. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. Not because life was perfect, not because everything was solved, but because she knew, really knew, she had people who weren't going anywhere. She wasn't lost anymore. She was home. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, casting warm golden light across the counters and floor. Amy shuffled in wearing oversized slippers and a messy bun, still half asleep, but for the first time in forever, she wasn't waking up with dread twisting in her stomach. Instead, there was a strange, unfamiliar peace, like her body hadn't gotten the memo that the nightmare was finally over. Amanda was already at the stove flipping pancakes, while humming off-key. Tammy sat nearby with a coffee mug, scrolling through her phone, and occasionally laughing at comments online. When Amy entered, both of them looked up. Mornin', jail-free superstar, Amanda teased with a grin. Amy snorted. Girl, shut up. Tammy lifted her mug. Freedom looks good on you. Amy walked to the counter and poured herself some iced coffee. As she took her first sip, she realized how different it felt to simply exist.
No tensión.
No waiting for someone to call, yell, question, or accuse. Just morning. Just life. Just quiet. She let out a long breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Amanda watched her for a second, then asked gently, You sleep any better? Amy nodded slowly. Yeah, I actually did. That's good, Amanda said softly. Your nervous system probably finally took a day off. Tammy chimed in without looking up from her phone. She still snores like a dying tractor. Amy threw a napkin at her. Liar. Tammy shrugged. Girl, that house shook. Even with the jokes, Amy felt something shifting, something healing. After breakfast, Tammy announced she wanted to go outside. It's too pretty to sit inside being emotional and crusty, she declared. So they helped her outside to the porch swing, the same place she once sat alone feeling trapped and hopeless. Now she sat upright, confident, and breathing fresh air with a sense of pride. Amy joined her, sitting beside her quietly. The yard was calm, birds chirping, the breeze soft. For a while, neither spoke. Then Tammy said quietly, Ever think about what's next? Amy rubbed her hands together. Sometimes. But it scares me. Tammy nodded. Yeah, starting over always does. Amy swallowed. But maybe I can finally start healing. Focus on the boys. Maybe even find happiness again. A small smile tugged at Tammy's lips. You deserve it. Those 3 simple words felt heavier than any court decision. Amy looked out across the yard. You know, when everything was falling apart, I kept thinking I was failing. As a wife, as a mom, just at life. Tammy shook her head.
Nah.
You didn't fail.
You survived.
Amy flinched at that.
Survived.
No one ever said it like that before. Tammy continued. You didn't stay. You didn't go back. You didn't let fear make your decisions. That ain't failure, Amy. That's strength. Amy's throat tightened. She blinked fast to stop tears from falling. I didn't feel strong. Tammy shrugged. Strength ain't about feeling brave. It's about standing up even when you're scared out of your damn mind. A beat of silence passed before Amy whispered, I want to rebuild my life, but I don't know where to start. Tammy smirked and nudged her shoulder. You start right here. With us. With today. Amy let those words sink in. Not someday. Not after everything was perfect. Not after she healed completely.
Today.
She finally nodded. Yeah, okay.
Today.
Tammy lifted her mug like a toast. To new beginnings. Amy raised her iced coffee.
To peace.
Amanda poked her head out the door holding syrup and yelled, To breakfast part 2, because I made too much and I ain't wasting food. The sisters laughed. Real, full laughter. Not forced. Not masked. Not cautious. For the first time in what felt like years, Amy wasn't living in survival mode. She was living. And that alone felt like a victory. Later that afternoon, Amanda convinced everyone to get out of the house. Fresh air, sunshine, and walking are good for the soul, she announced like a motivational speaker who never actually followed their own advice. Amy rolled her eyes. A walk sounds good, as long as it ain't uphill. I ain't trying to pass out and become a documentary. Tammy cackled. Girl, TLC already filmed that in season 2. They loaded into the car, a process that took longer than the actual drive, mostly because everyone forgot something: water bottle, sunglasses, phone charger, inhaler, snack, extra snack, backup snack. By the time they made it to the park, the sun was warm, but not overwhelming. Kids were running around, dogs barked in excitement, and the smell of fresh grass filled the air. Tammy stepped out slowly, using her cane, not because she needed it as much anymore, but because it gave her confidence. Amy walked beside her, watching her movements like a proud sister. You look strong, Amy said quietly. Tammy paused mid-step, her eyes softening. I feel strong, she replied. It wasn't bragging. It wasn't defensive. It was calm, simple.
True.
They walked at a slow pace along the paved path. Each step felt symbolic, not just movement but progress. Amy's thoughts drifted. For months she'd lived in chaos: court dates, fear, doubt, pressure, lawyers, phone calls, judgment, exhaustion. Today felt like the first day she could breathe without bracing herself. It didn't feel normal yet, but it felt possible. As they continued down the trail, Tammy suddenly stopped and pointed. Look, a little girl was flying a bright rainbow kite. The tail fluttered behind it, twisting and soaring in the sky. She laughed loudly every time the wind lifted it higher. Amy watched her, mesmerized. There was something poetic about it. Fragile strings, unpredictable wind, yet still rising. Tammy murmured, almost to herself, Funny how things that almost fall still fly. Amy blinked, startled by how perfectly the words matched her life. I feel like that kite, she whispered. Like everything was about to crash, but somehow I'm still here. Tammy nodded.
Yeah.
Just because life's messy doesn't mean it ain't moving forward. The breeze picked up and the kite shot higher. Amy smiled slowly. That simple moment, wind, color, laughter, felt like a message she didn't know she needed. As they walked again, Amanda caught up holding cotton candy and a lemonade. You two look emotional, she said. Did a bird poop on you or something? Amy snorted. No, Einstein. We were having a deep moment. Amanda shrugged. Well, here's something even deeper. I brought snacks. Tammy took the cotton candy with dramatic reverence. Bless you. They sat on a bench, sharing cotton candy, people watching, and existing without fear. For the first time in a long time, Amy wasn't thinking about the past or worrying about the future. She was present, and it felt new. It felt strange. But most importantly, it felt right. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting everything in soft gold, Amy whispered, I think I'm finally ready to move on. Amanda put her arm around her. Tammy placed her hand on top of Amy's.
No speeches.
No advice. Just support. Amy exhaled slowly, the weight she'd been carrying for months finally beginning to lift. She wasn't just free from court. She was free from fear. And now, She was ready to rebuild, brick by brick, step by step, into a life she finally believed she deserved. That evening, when Amy finally returned home, the house felt quieter than usual, not empty, but peaceful. The boys were already asleep, sprawled across their beds like tiny tornadoes that had finally run out of energy. She stood in the doorway, watching them for a moment. Their soft breathing, their innocent faces, their small hands curled into loose fists, it grounded her. No matter what happened, no matter what storms she faced, this was why she kept fighting. She walked back to the living room and sat on the couch, letting the silence settle. A lamp glowed softly beside her, casting a warm amber light that felt comforting. Her phone buzzed. For a second, her stomach tightened the way it always had when notifications came, trained by months of bad news, messages, and uncertainty. But when she looked at the screen, it wasn't stress. It was something else entirely. A message from Brian. Just seeing his name again sent a ripple of old emotions through her. Hurt, confusion, sadness, memories. Moments of laughter. Moments of pain. Moments she no longer knew what to do with. She hesitated before opening it. Finally, she tapped. Envelope with Arrow Brian. I heard the verdict. I'm glad you're free. I really am. Amy stared at the words. Part of her expected anger, accusations, manipulation, old patterns she had come to know too well. But his message was calm, almost remorseful. She took a breath and typed back carefully, not reacting emotionally, not lashing out, not pulling him close. Just honest. Envelope with Arrow Amy. Thank you. I hope you figure things out. For yourself. For your future. A few seconds passed. Then another message. Envelope with Arrow Brian. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, and maybe I lost the best thing I ever had. But I'm proud of you. I mean that. Unexpected tears blurred Amy's vision. Not because she missed him, not because she wanted him back, but because those words felt like closure. For months she had waited, consciously or not, for something to end the story. And here it was.
No yelling. No chaos.
Just an ending. She typed slowly. Envelope with Arrow Amy. I hope you work on yourself. I hope you grow. But this is the end of our chapter. There was no typing bubble. No reply. Just stillness. Amy placed the phone face down on the table and leaned back. Her heart didn't ache. It didn't panic. It didn't feel broken. It felt calm. Like a door had finally closed. Like something heavy had settled into the past where it belonged. A soft knock came from the hallway. Gage stood there, rubbing his eyes, holding a stuffed dinosaur. Mommy, can I sleep with you tonight? Amy wiped her tears gently and smiled. Of course, baby.
Come here.
He climbed onto the couch beside her and curled into her side without a word. She wrapped her arm around him, breathing in the warm scent of baby lotion and innocence. The world, for the first time in months, felt right.
Safe.
Hopeful. As Gage drifted back to sleep against her, Amy whispered into the quiet room. I'm done surviving. She closed her eyes. I'm finally ready to live. And there, with her son sleeping peacefully in her arms and the future finally looking clear instead of terrifying, Amy allowed herself to believe in something she hadn't felt in a long time, a new beginning. The next morning, Amy woke before the boys, the early sunlight spilling softly across the kitchen floor. For the first time in weeks, she didn't rush.
No panique.
No checklist of emergencies or obligations pressing down on her chest. She poured a cup of coffee, the aroma filling the small kitchen. Sipping slowly, she allowed herself a few moments to just breathe. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional chirp of a bird outside the window. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Tammy. Envelope with Arrow Tammy. Breakfast at my place? Need some sister time. Amy smiled. Tammy had always been the constant in her life, her anchor through chaos. She quickly typed back, Envelope with Arrow Amy. Be there in 20. Need my sister fix. 20 minutes later, Amy pulled into Tammy's driveway. The smell of breakfast, eggs, bacon, and fresh toast. welcomed her as she walked inside. Tammy was already bustling around the kitchen, her usual energy a comforting presence. "You're early," Tammy teased, flipping a pancake with practiced ease. "I like to see my sister in action," Amy replied with a small grin. They ate, talking about small, mundane things, plans for the weekend, a funny video they saw online, a recipe they wanted to try. For once, there were no hospital updates, no court proceedings, no fears of what could go wrong.
Just the two of them.
After breakfast, they stepped outside onto the porch. The crisp autumn air made them both pull their sweaters tighter. The leaves crunched underfoot as they walked around the yard. Tammy paused, looking over at Amy. "You've been carrying a lot lately," she said softly. "I know the court stuff, Brian, everything. How are you really holding up?" Amy took a deep breath, letting the honesty spill out.
"I'm lighter."
"Not physically, but in here," she said, tapping her chest. "The fear, the constant worry, it's finally easing. I can breathe again. I can think about us, not just surviving." Tammy nodded, squeezing her hand. "That's good. You deserve this peace." They sat on the swing, watching the sun climb higher, the golden light filtering through the trees. There was a sense of stillness, a calm that neither sister remembered feeling for a long time. Later, Andrea joined them, smiling brightly as Tammy introduced her to a new recipe she had tried. The three women laughed, shared stories, and teased one another. It was ordinary, and yet extraordinary. Small moments stitched together into a sense of home and healing. For Amy, it was a reminder that life wasn't just about crises or struggles. It was about connection.
Love.
Shared laughter. Even amidst chaos, these moments were anchors, grounding her in what truly mattered. As the afternoon sun began to dip toward the horizon, Amy realized that for the first time, she wasn't waiting for the next storm. She was present, alive, and ready to embrace whatever came next. The golden light of late afternoon bathed the Slaton home, casting long shadows across the yard. Tammy, Andrea, and Amy had settled into a quiet rhythm, each engaged in small tasks yet connected by an unspoken bond. Laughter still drifted through the air, punctuated by the occasional squeal from the boys chasing a stray ball. Tammy leaned back in the porch swing, taking a deep breath. "Do you realize," she said slowly, "that for the first time, I feel like I'm actually living and not just surviving?" Andrea reached over, lacing her fingers with Tammy's. "You've earned this, Tammy. Every struggle, every setback, it's brought you here." Amy watched them, a smile tugging at her lips. Her own journey had been fraught with fear, uncertainty, and sacrifice, but the moment felt like a balm for all that pain. She realized that her battles, her loyalty, her fierce love for Brian, and her devotion to her family had all led to this, a fragile, beautiful calm after the storm. Family, love, and support, Amy murmured to herself. That's what matters. Later, as the sun dipped behind the Kentucky hills, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, the sisters gathered inside for dinner. The table was chaotic as usual. Glenn and Gage fought playfully over who got the last piece of bread, Chris teased Amanda about something trivial, and Misty chattered incessantly. But amidst the chaos was a sense of harmony, a quiet understanding that they were stronger together. Tammy finally stood, tapping her spoon against her glass to gain everyone's attention. "I just want to say thank you," she began, her voice steady but soft. "For being here, for accepting me, for supporting me. Not just now, but always." Amy reached over, squeezing her hand. "We've always had you, Tammy. And we always will." Andrea smiled, leaning into Tammy. "And I'll be by your side, every step." The moment was simple, yet profound, a family and a partner standing together, not just through crises, but through life itself. The struggles, the hospital visits, the court cases, and the weight loss journeys had shaped them, but they hadn't broken them. As night fell, the sisters and their families stepped outside one last time. Tammy inhaled the crisp air, feeling a sense of freedom she hadn't known in years.